Thanks, Kyle, and welcome everyone. Let me officially welcome, Kyle. Those that haven't met Kyle Bernbrower, our new sports information director, Parish Old School, right? Communications director, I should say. And so we welcome. I think Kyle's been with us for maybe just about 2 months. So I know he's worked hard to try to get around to meet a lot of you. But there's a lot of you, so I'm sure he hasn't gotten to everyone. So make sure that you take time to introduce yourself to him. I know he'd appreciate it. Probably, Kyle, you've been here for a couple months, and you've probably done some research, working on the media guide and all those types of things, and you realize that you're the 6th sports information director in the last 7 years for baseball. And so it's a tough crowd here, and so that's why we go through so many, and it's not because of me. It's because of these guys. No, fortunately for us, we've had some great sports information directors, and they've all moved on, to bigger and better things. And so we're hopeful that we'll keep Kyle for a little bit anyway. Probably the most asked question since last June 26, especially after getting past the summer, has been that how do you put the championship behind you? And the truth of the matter is, that hasn't been that difficult, and pretty easy when you walk into the first team meeting. We have 40 players, and 20 of them weren't here last year. It's a quick reminder of how college athletics work. There's not free agency, contrary to popular belief with the portal and all that. There's a lot of attrition, and guys graduate, they get drafted, and guys move on, and new recruits come in. And so when I look back at this past fall, it was a goal of ours. I think one of the things we talked about as a staff early on before the players showed up is, how do we use this? How do we use this championship to better the program now that it's happened, and how do we guard against it being one of those things that you look back and make things difficult? And I think it's a juggle. But when I look back at the fall, I think baseball was pretty normal. If you came out in the fall and watched fall inter squads, it seemed to at least us that pretty normal, about the same amount, maybe a couple more fans in the stands for inter squads, and bunt defenses were the same, the pickoffs were the same. Probably the difference, as you can imagine, was outside, right, when you got off the field, and that was the juggle. And I appreciate Keith Carter, our athletic director, of course Kyle Campbell, my sports administrator. It was a big juggle in the fall to try to give the championship its right due. Right. One of the things that I've realized, and I think I always realized it, but didn't maybe particularly realize it until you win it, is how quickly it all ends in baseball. Our season ends when school's out. And so as soon as you get back, usually it's a loss, right? Your season ends with a loss somewhere. And you get back, you try to hold the players for 36 hours and have exit meetings, and then they're gone. They're going to get ready for the draft, or they're going home for a couple weeks to get back for summer school, or they're going to summer baseball. And this, when you win a championship, we're fortunate enough to throw together, the parade and the celebration a couple days afterwards. But then, boom, it's over. Guys go their separate ways. And so we wanted to make sure this fall that we were able to juggle the new team, and also juggle some of the ceremonies, some of the celebrations, that take place, to again, give its right due. And I think we did a great job with that, and the administration did a great job. So it was busier. It was a busier fall off the field, a lot more speaking engagements, and even leading up to the season, but a good busy. I think we'd all take that kind of busyness every single year. But I think I speak for the coaches and I speak for the players that we've been waiting for today. right? The start of spring practice, the start to really officially flip that page, and 3 weeks from opening day, so we can just talk about 2023 and move forward. So with that, I'll talk about the players here in a second. But one of the things that I think when I think about this 2023 version of Ole Miss baseball is it's a great mix. A little different mix than last year. Last year we were an older team, as many of you know. This team's a great mix. It's not, contrary to popular belief, I don't think we're super young. I don't think we lost some really great players, but we returned some really great players. And I think it's a great mix of, returners, transfers, and first-year guys, freshmen. And one of the things I had Chris Godoris, our director of analytics, look up, I said, we talk about we returned 5 of the starting 9 and we returned these pitchers, but what's that look like, statistically? It's exactly 50% of the College World Series innings that were thrown, guys return. So, our returning pitchers threw half the innings in the College World Series last year. 53 of the at-bats from the College World Series returned. So it's, not a super old team, but certainly, not a team that, is that postseason is foreign to them. Guys that have been in Omaha, guys that have been in postseason, and guys that have had success. With that, when you talk about the position players, and just to kind of give you, and I'll answer, as anything, as the questions come up. But, we start today. So we start inter-squads today, and we'll inter-squad for the next 3 weeks. And this is where we try to figure out the starting lineup. This is where we try to figure out, the starting rotation from Parrish and Chase and guys that have been here for so long and have covered us for so long. We used to have this media day the week leading up to the season, but things change. And the way you cover sports change. And so, to me, it got to the point where they already know what the rotation is. They already know what the starters are. I mean, we're 4 days away from opening day. And so I thought it wasn't the right time to have this meeting. It's better to have it now to give you as much information so you can write your stories over the next 3 weeks, about the team. So, with that, as Jacob Gonzalez, preseason All-American, one of the most highly ranked players in the country, returns at shortstop, and had a good fall up until he got injured. As many of you know, injured his knee, PCL sprain, and missed the rest of the fall. But his full speed was full speed before Christmas time. And so no worries about that. There's no limitations to what he can do on the field, or, can he run? Can he go full speed? He's a full go. Of course, Kemp Alderman returns. Kemp will do kind of double duty for us. He's caught a lot, this fall for us, behind the plate to back up Calvin Harris. But certainly will play corner outfield, either left or right field, and one of those presents in the middle lineups that we're excited, and to watch Kemp grow, as a player and as a hitter. It's kind of really cool. It's what you get in this sport and coach for, to watch guys just super talented guys that continue to get better and better every year. Peyton Chatnier returns in his 4th year as one of the team leaders, a guy that's played terrific for us, especially down the stretch last year in postseason. Maybe one of the unsung heroes of the postseason, especially early on. Played great in Miami to get us through that regional, and again another great leader for us. TJ McCants, who returns, played center field, might play some right field as well. Super, one of those kind of ultra talented guys that can do a lot of things, can play infield, can play outfield. He's put on some weight, significant weight, that I think he looks different in the uniform, and it's good weight. A guy that's about 200 pounds now, but still runs really well. Our best base stealer, but a guy that I think is ready to have one of those years that I think we kind of been waiting for TJ to have. Had a terrific year as a freshman, and a lot of expectations, and it happens a lot of times your sophomore year where maybe he didn't reach some of those expectations statistically. But I think when we look at it, TJ is one of those mainstays of the lineup and a guy that's going to help us out a lot. Calvin Harris Calvin, a lot of people didn't notice Calvin into the College World Series last year, and had a terrific series in Omaha. A kid from that grew up in Iowa, so what a neat thing to do it so close and have so many parents, friends, family there. But the good news for Calvin is he moves back behind the plate to his natural position. Truth be known that we had a great catcher, as in Hayden Dunhurst. If we didn't have Hayden, Calvin probably would have started at least last year. And a guy that's one of the highly ranked catchers in the country. Garrett Wood returns, and got elected as team captain by his teammates, a guy that gives us a lot of depth and versatility in the infield, can play any four of the positions, including first base, and will do so, I think, throughout the year, and jump from third base to second base. I think relieve, Gonzo a little bit at shortstop at times and play some first base for us. And then, one of the last returning position players, Reagan Burford, who got a lot of at-bats early in the season until we settled in on a lineup, but for true, or I should say sophomore, got a lot of at-bats, on that national championship team. But with that, you look at the other side, the new guys, that come to add some depth to the position player group. Everybody talks about the portal and transfers, but we've got three transfers that I think will impact our program this year. First, Ethan Groth. Ethan is from Tulane University, a kid that I think it's kind of what the portal was all about. A kid that was having a great year at Tulane, got injured, probably would have got drafted last year very high and left, but because of an injury, did not get drafted, and goes into the portal and gives us some depth in the outfield. A guy that certainly can play center field. We feel that he's kind of a top of the lineup, bat. He will bring some speed to the bases that's needed. And so just a good addition, by our staff. Ethan Leger is a transfer from Delgado Community College via Nicholls State. So he played at Nicholls State, then transferred to Delgado and is here. Infielder, played mostly third base in the fall, but I think could play short, could play third or second base. An older guy that I think is ready to play immediately and certainly help us. Anthony Calarco is a transfer from Northwestern in Chicago. Was an All-Big Ten player, double-digit home runs, good batting average. A guy from the left-handed side, first baseman, that certainly is going to give us, I think, another good addition in the middle of the lineup. Some freshmen that I think that you'll see and certainly impact this team. Will Furness at first base. Will is a highly touted freshman infielder, big left-handed bat. Many of you know his father, who was held the record for almost 20 years, the most hits in the Southeastern Conference. Great hitter in his own right in the mid 90s. Somebody I was fortunate enough to coach. Will's a lot like him. It's got that kind of power and that kind of, I think, ability with the bat, and certainly going to help us. Mason Morse from Tupelo High School, local product that I think you'll see as a position player and as a pitcher, on our staff. And Judd Udermark from North Carolina. Judd is coming off a surgery of his non-throwing shoulder, so missed most of the fall, but a highly touted freshman himself, and should see the field this spring. On the pitching side, talk about returners. We talked about 50% of the innings in the World Series, and none bigger than the innings by Jack Doherty, big right-hander. Jack last year started and relieved and did that in postseason as well. A guy that I think can do both. Don't be surprised, especially with the injury to Josh Mallitz, if you don't see him in the bullpen. I don't want to, box ourselves in and say that he's certainly going to start there, but a guy that we feel comfortable with out of the bullpen. He feels comfortable. We know that he can start as well, and that's part of what we need to figure out over the next 3 weeks is the rotation and who's going to the bullpen. So he's one of the guys that's kind of a wild card for us that we think he'll be great as a starter, be great out of the bullpen. Hunter Elliott, what a tremendous freshman year, preseason All-American, from down the street in Tupelo again. Just a guy that. When you look back at last year, there were so many bright moments, so many great things that happened to us, and so many guys that had terrific years. But as good a freshman year on the mound as we've had in quite some time, and that's including some really good freshmen, even recently, and a guy that pitched in postseason and pitched in a tough spot. He pitched in day 2, where if you look at our postseason run last year, that was the tough day to pitch. That was the second day, in a regional against host national seed Miami, and matching up against their ace to match up in a super regional. Against Southern Miss's ace, and then of course, pitched a couple times in Omaha, and pitched in a championship game that we clinched. Also, Mason Nichols, another Team USA guy, along with Hunter Elliott. Mason, another great freshman last year, and was terrific for us down the road. Mitch Morrell, Jackson Kimbrell, 2 older guys that have been in the program that have seen a little action, but both had really, really good falls, and guys that we think are ready to take that next step, and guys that I think we'll count on, out of the bullpen. And then Braden Jones, a kid that redshirted last year from Madison Ridgeland down in the Jackson area, that we think is ready to take the next step and help us, on the mound. The new guys, a couple transfers, Xavier Rivas from University of Indianapolis, Division II, but a left-handed guy, so obviously that's welcomed. But he was very dominant this fall and showed that, he's certainly, one of those candidates to be a weekend starter for us. Also a transfer, Tommy Henninger from junior college, that I think he'll start off in the bullpen. Tommy's a little different arm slot right-hander that I think, again, a little different look for the hitters and somebody that can help us. And freshmen, I think the freshman class that Carl Lafferty, our recruiting coordinator, Mike Clement brought in, and I think was ranked number 2 in the country this past fall. Led by an outstanding freshman from Collierville High School, Grayson Saunier. Grayson probably had as good a fall as any freshman that I can remember that stepped on the field, and not just statistically in the fall, but just stuff-wise. And sometimes, as in the fall in the inter squad, you kind of got to weigh that. Sometimes the stats don't necessarily match up with the ability or just the raw talent that you see. It certainly did with him, and he had a terrific fall, and a guy that we think has put himself in position to be a possible weekend starter as a true freshman. J.T. Quinn, another I think super talented kid from Tampa, Florida, big 6'6", 6'7" right-hander. Will run the ball up in the mid to upper 90s. Has got a shot, I think, both as a starter and a reliever. We'll just have to see where that fits. Sam Takoyan. Sam's from another big physical right-hander from California, another guy that I think, again, like JT, we'll have to see where he fits, on this staff, but a guy that certainly is going to log innings as a freshman, either out of the bullpen or a starter or both. And then Cole Ketchum. Cole Ketchum, a Mississippi product, a guy that throws 3 pitches in the strike zone, and I think another freshman that's got a bright future. With that, I'm sure there's questions, but I didn't want to get too much into it. I'll leave it up to you. We'll try to answer yours, so go ahead.
You mentioned Hunter Elliott as a guy who really stepped up as a freshman. What is his next step for you guys?
Wow. I don't know if next step is if you're talking about just game, he's worked a lot this fall, him and Coach Lafferty on improving his slider, to make it more of a dominant pitch for him. Last year he threw both a curve and a slider, and then and they were okay. They were average pitches for him, but really I think if you looked at Elliott, the scouting report is a really good fastball that's got a lot of movement and a really good changeup. that's got a lot of movement as well, and a great competitor. So we want to keep those things. We want him to continue to have the outstanding fastball and change, but we want to make sure that we continue to improve. But it's a little different, but not anything we don't think he can handle is when you step there on Friday night. It's different. Friday night in Southeastern Conference play is different than anywhere. When the lights flip on, and usually the other guy on the other mound is a projected first rounder, a projected All-American. The games are usually low scoring. Your runs are at a premium. It's the first game of the series. The crowds are big and large, and so it's a little different role. But I think if anyone can handle it, certainly Hunter can.
You mentioned Xavier Rivas saying, just having the fall that he had and possibly being a candidate for, a weekend starter and all that. What about his pitching arsenal just kind of stands out and just kind of makes him one of those guys?
Well, I think he's a guy that possesses 4 pitches, right? He throws 4 pitches in the strike zone. I think he's an older guy, so he's got some toughness, some experience to him, and I think it's part of his personality as well. So I think certainly that lends itself to the experience and just being a tough guy to begin with. He's left-handed, if I didn't mention that earlier. He's got a fastball in the low 90s, a hard slider in the low 80s, a good changeup and curveball. But a guy that's, when you look at it, I think it's the whole package. I think he's tough enough to pitch on the weekends. I think he's got the stuff to pitch on the weekends. And he came here to do that.
Mike started a couple true freshmen opening weekend over the course of your career. With Sonia, is it just about continuing to produce, or is there certain kind of intangibles you want to see from him for that slide?
I think probably the first part, just continue to produce. I mean, it's not that we haven't had the freshmen that are talented enough. You've seen that, and a lot of times those guys like a Lance Lynn or Drew Pomerantz, they may have not started this season as a freshman, on the weekends, but eventually, they got to the weekends, and so everybody kind of figures it out. Not everybody, the great ones. Figure it out at some point. The good thing about Grayson is it seems like he's figured it out sooner than a lot of guys. Similar to Doug, although Doug didn't start, but Doug looked like that in the fall. I mean, when the first inter squad, he looked like he was ready to compete, and you knew that he was going to pitch on that team. You just didn't know where. But I think Grayson, I think it's a combination of. The way he handles himself on and off the field, and the mental makeup and all the things that I think can make you great. Besides a great fastball, 2 breaking balls, and a changeup. So it's a good package. And so again, it's hard to I think we would be really premature if we start announcing the rotation right now. But I think it would be unfair to say he hasn't put himself in a great position to be one of those guys.
Mike, when you're trying to turn the page from last year, is it kind of easy to adjust when you see 7 teams in the conference that are ranked as high as they are?
It's a great point. I never looked at it that way, so I said, I guess the answer is no. But it's a great point. But this league is so unforgiving, so relentless. And probably all the sports, right? I mean, in football and basketball and women's basketball, soccer. So you have to be ready to go. But I've been in this league long enough. I know what to expect. I don't have to look at the polls and count the teams and know who's good. They're all going to be good. I know often when I go speak somewhere, they say, well, what are the teams that are going to be at the top, or who's going to be the teams to watch? And I'm like, all of them. They're, and everybody can beat you in the Southeastern Conference. So it's a good point. It's not probably what wakes me up at night. Delaware wakes me up at night. And I'm we want to make sure that we're ready for them. And I know that sounds like coaches speak, but I think you would think differently. That's how the coach is not supposed to just speak, but kind of do and act, right? We got a long ways before conference play in mid-March.
Looking at the next 3 weeks, what are 3 areas of improvement that you want to focus on before Delaware comes to town?
Three. I don't know if 3 areas of improvement, so I'll kind of run a little bit from the question because that got scary. we'll go with one, really solidify, not just the rotation, because I know Parrish is sitting there and he wants the rotation, especially the closer, and he wants to write that down, put that. I think we're going to figure out the rotation, and the rotation may change. And certainly it changed last year, and most years it changes, throughout the year, and guys that are pitching well, and maybe somebody has an injury and has to step back, but more so the roles of the pitching staff. Who's going to be in the pen? Who's going to be the first guy out of the bullpen? Are we going to have a guy that can come in and pitch to left-handers? Are we going to is the closer going to be your typical closer? Or is he going to be kind of the first in? So just the roles of that. I think one of the things that I think we've accomplished to this point, but was a challenge to some of the guys that you'll talk to in a few minutes, is the older guys taking the next step to be leaders. I think that in our program and in the culture of it, Tim Elko wasn't always a leader here. Contrary to popular belief, he just wasn't. He was a young guy. He was a young guy that didn't play. He's a young guy that was trying to find himself, and so it's kind of a maturation, and I think every team needs that leadership. So you look at some guys like Kemp and Hunter and Peyton and who else is over there? Jacob. These are guys that, last year probably didn't have to be those guys. They didn't, we had Bench and we had Graham and we had Derek Diamond and other guys that have been in the program. So I think, for those guys to continue to be leaders and help us in that way, not just with your bat or your glove or your pitching arm. That was 2.5. That's all I have. Sorry.
Mike, you talked about, it's very premature now, going through things, trying to work out that rotation, but it sounds like you guys have a great mix of guys, between guys who have great postseason experience for y'all, guys who are coming in that are young with a lot of talent, transfer guys as well. As a coach, kind of, if you have all that talent and you're trying to figure it out, what are kind of the main things you look for those other guys to potentially win the job, other than, I guess, the stuff like, is it instinctual based? How does that kind of?
I think it's a combination. It's a great question, but really broad what you just said, because it might be a little different for the pitchers than it is for the position players. And I think really it's the makeup of the team. I mean, we're trying to put a team together. But we're not looking for just the 9 best players, but the best 9. And the best 9 meaning collectively, right? With synergy, who plays the best out there. So it may not necessarily be the most talented player. Maybe there's a player that's more talented or has a higher batting average. But when we move that person into the lineup that's got a little less batting average, we seem to win more games. Right. And so, some of that is makeup, and some of it's just trying to figure out a lineup, where, do we need to be more defensive? We're all right with the offense, but do we pull somebody out that does hit? But because our defense, needs a little boost, that we're going to play a guy that's a little more defensive in a position. That happens, and sometimes it's in an uncharacteristic position. If you're blessed and you got a shortstop, like Jacob, that might be your best offensive player, and you got a catcher like Calvin Harris that's a really good offensive player. You're looking at premium defensive positions, and so those guys handle the defense and the offense. Sometimes you might be able to give up a little offense in another position. So I think, again, it's a really broad question, but I think that's why you juggle the lineup, and everybody wants to know what the lineup is, but that's why you're constantly trying to find what that right mix is. So it's not just to look down and look at the scorecard or stat sheet, find out who's got the best batting average. It's what team is going to win. Not the 9 best, but the best 9.
Mike, do you sense that you and the program are viewed differently after the championship? And if so, what might be an example of that?
So now comes the tough questions. I don't know, and I think that's probably, I think that's better for you to answer. You're the one that probably sees and knows and hears from the public probably more than I. I know from an Ole Miss standpoint, the thing, and I've said it, and I said it this morning in an interview, one of the things that it touched me a lot, when you win the championship, there's a lot of feelings and emotions that you probably anticipate. because as a head coach, it's always been a dream and a goal to win the national championship. So there's a lot of those things that happened that I thought would happen, and there's some other things that happened that I didn't expect to happen. And one of those was to realize how important it was to the Ole Miss family, how many people it would touch, how many people showed up in Omaha. We're in the top 5 in attendance for the last 16 years. We sell a lot of season tickets. This year we'll sell over 8,500 season tickets. Well, there's about 20,000 in Omaha. So there's a lot of people who went to Omaha that don't own season tickets here, right? But they're just Ole Miss fans. Right, and maybe they're football fans or basketball fans, but made it there, and out of the curiosity, out of the story, whatever the reason, and how many people that it really touched, and I think from that standpoint, that was something that I wasn't prepared for. I knew it would be important to me and my coaching staff and the players and the diehard baseball fans that come here every day, but I didn't know outside of that reach that it would touch so many people, and that part of it has been really cool. Beyond that, you're going to have to answer, nationally and all of that. I can't answer beyond that.
Talking about Mason and his performance in the postseason, what have you seen him kind of carry over from that in the fall that's kind of helping him take that next step in his progression?
Well, one of the things is because we, lose some starters, we tried to, extend them a little bit. Last year was just stretch only, and so we tried to, go a little more out of the windup. To be honest with you, that hasn't been a great success. I have no doubt, he's going to be a huge part, but I think he'll start back in the bullpen again. But one of the things that I think we all, when you look down, anytime that you return pitchers, I think it's big. The position players, guys can grow into that. You can get younger guys, but anytime that you can say, hey, this guy, it's a Team USA guy, this guy pitched in Omaha. He pitched in some tough situations in Omaha. And now we're a year later. Just that experience of doing it, and he was just a freshman. I think as a coach, you feel good about it. And so the biggest thing I think he's got going for him is his experience. And again, that's in any spot, position player, pitcher, but I think more so for a pitcher than a position player.
Coach, you've mentioned how obviously the team changes year to year and a lot of turnover this year. After a successful season where you win the national championship, obviously shows that things worked well. But is there anything that maybe this year you'd want to do differently in how the team runs or just on a day-to-day basis that you've learned from last year, new knowledge that this year would be different?
No, I think I'm sure. We were always trying to get better, but when I hear the question, I think, the thing that comes to my mind, and it's probably not the answer that you wanted, I'm sorry. I think what last year did for us as a program that, it cemented into us that the system does work, right? And one of the reasons that we were able to be successful is because of the culture of the program. I don't know how many programs can be 7-14 and get out of that hole and win a national championship. That doesn't happen much, if at all. But I can't remember a time in the league that's happened. But it only happened because it was the perfect storm in the sense that we had a lot of guys like Bench and Elko and Graham and Diamond and Chofie and guys that have worn this uniform for 4+ years, and they've won more games in that uniform than any team or any player in a 4-year span. And so credit them for showing up every single day. The losses were tough. It was tough on everyone. But the thing, one of the things I'm most proud of was all of those guys showing up every single day, being so consistent, where you didn't look at them and go, man, I don't know if we can win today. Every day they stepped on the field, they looked like they could win. And so I'm getting a little off your question, but my point being, I think that's why we won last year, is because of the system, because of the culture, because of, they could persevere and get through that. And so I think one of the good things, if you're a coach or you're running a business, is try to continue to do what you do well, right? Don't screw that up. right? And just, just to change for change sake. And so this year's team's different, as I mentioned. And so there might be some things that we'll have to do a little differently because there'll be some guys in some different roles. But I think from day one, we started putting bunt defenses in and did stuff that we've been doing for over 20 years.
Injury-wise, everybody full go outside of Maddox or Mallets or?
Well, Maddox, Mallets got injured. Will Plattner, one of our catchers, sprained his PCL, similar injury, not as bad as from what I'm told as Jacob. So he's going to be out for a little bit. And, how long, I don't know, but when I say a little bit, maybe a month, maybe a little longer. We'll have to see as he gets through it. I know when they kind of diagnosed it, and then yesterday he was feeling a lot better. I know he made some gains, but it's a knee and it's a catcher. And so that's not a good mix. And so in doing so, we've moved Reagan Burford and Bo Gatlin have caught a little bit. Certainly we got Kemp behind Harris, but just to make sure to give us a little bit of depth, even in just inter-squad games, to make sure that we don't press, the two healthy guys too much.
Hey, Coach. Bradley Davis with WAPT Sports. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it. So I just wanted to ask about Mason and Riley's relationship, being both from Jackson Prep and then coming in at the same time, season under their belt coming into this year. Has that relationship just been close throughout the bat? Has it gotten closer? Just what have you seen between them?
That's one I think's better answered by them. The amazing thing is both super talented, obviously disappointing for Riley and going through the injury, but he's handled it as well as anybody. And when you watch him throw, you go, gosh, he looks like he can pitch right now. So he's well on his way to getting back on the mound, but that won't happen this year for us. It's, to me, one of the neat things about them is two talented kids from the same high school, but are totally different. And their personality and who they are, but both, I think, are going to leave their mark when it's all said and done here. On the mound and great representatives of the university. So it's really cool.
What impresses you the most about Gonzalez, just as a player, and in terms of you look at any mock draft, he's always in the top 5 or so. Just, I guess, dealing with him on a day-to-day basis, what would you say impresses you the most about him?
Wow. Pickett, there's not many things that don't impress you about him. From a baseball standpoint, how consistent he is every single day, how he goes about his business, just very professional. He works his tail off. He nobody works harder, but you wouldn't know it unless you watch. And if you watch, you go, man, he's not even in that group. Why is he back out there? He's taking extra ground balls and extra swings, and so I think that impresses me. And maybe the other part that you probably see as media is you would never guess that he's the whatever he is, third-ranked player in the draft. Doesn't seem like it. Doesn't act like it. He just acts like he's regular Joe, like he's the third-string shortstop. He goes about his business, and there's not a lot of hype, not a lot of drama or fluff to him. He is who he is, but we're glad he is who he is.
Coach, you said that Garrett Wood was selected by the players as the captain. From your perspective as head coach, obviously you didn't vote, but what makes him look like he could be a real great leader for this team in that new role?
Well, we don't usually mess up that very often. We wait to the very end of the fall, and we let the players select, and we try to give them, don't try to point them towards somebody, but try to make sure that they understand it's not a popularity contest. It's not supposed to necessarily be your best player. It's supposed to be the guy that represents you, the guy that, when you think of an Ole Miss Rebel baseball player, who's the face of the program? Who carries himself the most like that? Who's the guy that that people gravitate towards in the locker room and the dugout? And so to be selected to that, and by clearly, so how we do it, because we've had captains and we've had co-captains before. If you are selected, you're allowed to vote for 2. But if somebody's a runaway winner, we don't just give second place to the co-captain. I mean, we have one captain, and so Tim's been a captain by himself before. But then there's been years where we've had co-captains because not that it's 100% even votes, but it's close enough to where both these guys deserve it. He was clearly decided by his teammates that he's the guy, and that's an important part. And you don't need to go too far back to last year to realize how important that role is on our team.
Mike, obviously, with the SEC being as tough as it gets when it comes to college baseball, when you look at the non-conference schedule, particularly one with a lot of Big Ten flavor and all that, I know we don't want to look too far ahead, but kind of on the surface level, what's kind of the common denominator as far as the challenge all will be facing just in non-conference play as a whole?
I don't know if there's a common denominator besides what you said. It's going to be a difficult schedule. You guys know that we try to go away one weekend, and this year we go to Minneapolis and play some Big Ten schools up there, and it's going to be a challenge anytime you're on the road. But we'll be in a dome, a little different, and play 3 different Big Ten schools. So it's I think challenging, but also I think it'll be one that the players will look forward to. But then when you look at the other weekends with Maryland, Purdue, and Delaware, it is challenging. And sometimes we think and we hope that we challenge ourselves every year. I think part of the Chris Cleary, who's our assistant coach that heads up the scheduling. One of the challenges is to, find that balance, of home and away, good and bad. Be careful, how you schedule it. But this is, like you said, is difficult. I think 4 weeks, to get through as we've had in a while.
It seems to trickle in a little more every year into the game. Where do you stand on the defensive shift at this point?
We're gonna shift. I was convinced. We talked about it. One of the things, and it's kind of odd, that kind of convinced me if Major League Baseball is thinking about changing the rules because it makes a difference, then maybe we should do that. There's no doubt when you watch it, and if you watch a college game or a Major League game, it makes a difference. I think the thing that kept me from doing it was when we played Delaware, and a kid that's never batted, or he played last year and had 27 at-bats, but we just talked about earlier how a kid changes over time. Like, how do we change what we've done for 150 years in baseball, where these guys that's where Abner Doubleday put them, and we're going to put them somewhere else. I get it in professional baseball when they get 500 at-bats, and they've been in the minor leagues for 4 years, and so that's 2,000 at-bats, and now you can look back at this information and say, hey, I know he's a rookie, but in 2,000 at-bats in minor leagues, this is where he hit the ball. I understand that, and I believe that. I just think, do we have the information? And so I've been convinced. That, and when we're not sure, I don't think we'll be super crazy with it. I think, there'll be some times that we'll play normal, if you will, straight up baseball, and there'll be times where we'll shift. The thing that I think has been more difficult for us is the play situations when you shift. It's not so much what player you should shift on and where that player should be positioned, but where who covers second, who covers third, how do we get a guy there, who backs up. These are things that none of us, even as coaches, were taught or learned. It's different baseball, and so we've had to learn on a fly and tell, hey, Chase, you got to back up this throw. And then as we talked about it more in a dugout during an inter-squad game, we go, oh, no, that it's probably not good for you to do it. Parrish, you're going to have to back up that throw. And so some of those things, it's just unorthodox. It's a little different way to play the game. And so some of the things how we defend after the ball's hit, right? If it's a single and the guy's going first to third, where the people run is a lot different. And so to me, I'm more worried about that than I am, did we shift right? Because we're going to shift and the guy's going to hit it where the guy should have been playing in regular baseball, and vice versa. We didn't shift on this guy, and that's going to happen, right? But hopefully not more times than not.
Coach, this time last year, you talked about you wanted to improve defense. That was one of the things you said that wasn't necessarily fun to talk about, but we wanted to make the defense a little better, and the defense took a step back statistically. What have you seen in the fall and leading into this year that I think looks hopeful for the team on defense this year?
Thank you for that question. It's all coaching, and I don't coach the defense. So, no. I think this year when you look at the personnel out there, I like our defense. I think we're a better outfield for sure. If you look at the guys that are likely to start out there, I think we're faster. I think we're more athletic in the outfield. Kemp runs like a 6'6", 6'7". I mean, he looks like a linebacker, and he probably should be a linebacker. He's that athletic, but he can really move out there. He's got a great arm. When you look at the infield, all those guys return, or I think we're just as good. So I think when you look at 1 through 8, positions out there, I think we're returning a guy that would make us better, because most guys improve, as we mentioned already a couple times, through their career here, or we replaced them with a better defender, somebody that's either better defensively or more athletically. So, and we weren't bad last year. I mean, one of the things you can be a little confused with when you look at the Southeastern Conference, there's a fine line, in the SEC about fielding. There's some teams at the bottom. We weren't one of those teams, and we fielded it actually better in conference play. Than probably in the middle of the road in the conference, maybe even for sure in the middle of the road, maybe even better than that. We want to field 975 or better. I don't know if we need to be 980. That's outstanding. What did we field last year?
972.
All right. So we got to get better. Yeah. We got to get better. Sorry. Go ahead.
You talked about how, it was nice that your guys kind of were able to put the national championship behind them, going back to their business. How kind of nice is it as a coach to see their mindset be so strong and not kind of have that championship kind of hangover-ish type of deal like right afterwards and just get back to business in the fall and now?
It's nice. I never thought it would be different than that, personally. I'm not built that way. I think, when we talk about athletes a lot of times, I think that's really for you guys. I think it's for the fans. Hey, they're still living in the past. Last year we talked about one of the reasons we had success is the guys didn't live in the past. I think one of the things that you learn as an athlete, especially as a baseball player, but I would imagine in any other sport, is you gotta forget the last play, the last shot, the last run or pass, and you can't think about the next one. You got to be here, right? Present moment, control what you control. You guys have been hearing that, but it's really true to be able to master that, and I think it's great to be able to celebrate at the end in some of those things. And so I haven't been scared to do that or guarded to do that. I think that would be very, very unfair to not only to the coaches, to the players, but to the fans. I think that's so unreasonable to win a championship and then put the coaching hat on and say, hey, we need to forget about that and move on to next year. But I don't think I was ever worried that the players would be stuck in that mode of, all the pats on the back and all of that. Man, we talk about them in one breath of how quickly their life is, how they are the reset generation and just they move on. And, how cool would it be to have success this year and win another championship and get back to Omaha? And I think you hear and see more of that in them than hey, living in the past. And I've never really been worried about that, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking anything for granted. But that's never been an issue. There's never been a time I don't remember ever really mentioning last year to this team, because it's not relative. I mean, it's really doesn't make, unless there's a teaching point, to one of the questions. I don't think it really is relative to this team. This is a different team, even though some of those players were here. But I think that's one of the, if you don't have success, are they living in the past? Probably not. It's probably because they didn't pitch well, or they probably didn't get any hits, right? Or they probably had some injuries. I don't think it's everybody's, reaping all the rewards of their success and sitting back and just taking it for granted. I don't. Not in today's day. It's too competitive. I don't think anybody does that.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned a little bit earlier the slow start that your squad had last year. I know you said you're not living in the past, but now that you've had some time to reflect, what would you say was the biggest catalyst for that turnaround, and how do you kind of hold on to that to bring that into this season?
Well, we really didn't get off to a slow start. We got off to a great start. We were 9-0. And then we were 16-2 when we started conference play and we were ranked number 1. But we had a spot in the middle, and it really was in the middle. So going into the second week of conference play, so going into week 6, we were ranked number 1 in the country. And then came Tennessee, right, and got beaten up, and I think we lost 5 out of 6 weekends, starting with week 2 of conference play. But certainly, as I said earlier, the credit goes to, the leadership, the guys for hanging in there. To believing in one another. And again, I said it, that I only think it happens with an older team, a team that's done it before, a team that's had success before, knew that they were better and than what they were. And so at the beginning of that funk, or however you want to say it, that slow time, we didn't play real well. But then we started to play well, but didn't get the results. We had 3 weeks in a row at the back end of those 6 weeks where we lost the weekend, but we won on Friday night. That's tough to do in our league. Usually the teams that don't have success lose on Friday night, and then they're trying to fight uphill. We won on Friday night and lost the next 2 games 3 weekends in a row. And again, that's tough to do. And it's, we were playing, okay baseball, but not good enough, and not good enough, as we've already mentioned, in our league. Anything else? Yes.
Since we have Keith right here, is there an update on the Tim Elko statue?
I think it's happening, but we're still in a work in progress. I know they're working on it, right? I mean, he promised. I don't know. I haven't seen anything, but I don't know.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I will say that, out front, that isn't a statue. That's an ADA ramp that's being done by the university, not the athletic department. That's a project that they had to do by law, and something to get the stadium back to code that it hasn't been. And so it's, people have asked, about that, but that has, more to do. Or not more to do. What it is, the university had to build a ramp there, and so that's what that is. That's not Tim Elko's statue.
I did notice one difference to the stadium, though, than the last time I was here, which
Yes.
is it now says 2022 National Champions on the entrance.
Yeah.
When you're walking in, if you do walk in that way, I don't know if coaches get a VIP entrance and everything, but what do you think about when you kind of enter into the stadium now, new season, and that's up there?
It's pretty high up there. I don't see it. I'm short. I thought it was really cool when I saw it go up there. I thought it was neat. I thought, we've tried hard. The university's tried hard to be able to honor and put those types of things, but then also for it to have its place. I think it's really classy. I think it looks cool. Certainly, I think, if you're a part of that, it makes you very proud. But to be honest with you, I took a picture and tweeted it out the first day, and I've probably seen it, maybe looked at it twice since then. So again, to John's point, it's not like I'm looking up there every day, patting myself, or I don't think Jacob or anybody else is patting themselves on the back when they look at it. But I think it's cool. I think it's the university's done a great job with that kind of stuff, to be able to, honor that team and put those marks out, but also to, we have another team, and there's been other great teams here, right, that didn't get there, but to be able to have their marks throughout the stadium. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.